Okay, everyone, welcome back. I'm going to start with meditation like we do each of our afternoon sessions, and then we'll move on from there. So if you'd like to join, I'm just going to do the chanting and go into the meditation. And you guys have all been meditating with me for quite a while, so I don't think I need to do any guidance here. So I'm just going to do the chanting and just go right into meditation, and then I'll come out with the chanting as well. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatava Manusranang Bhutto Bhagavati. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรภูริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So this afternoon's topic is the three poisons and transforming the mind away from craving, anger, and ignorance. But all of you guys have studied this with me, and you've actually studied it pretty recently as well, except for maybe you, Jan, but you've been probably learning online as well. So I don't know that I need to go through this and teach it in the formality, in the formal way that I normally do. But instead, it's probably just maybe a good time to have a little discussion to be sure that you guys understand these three poisons rather than talk about what they are. Anybody who's joining online that hasn't learned the three poisons with me, if that's what you were looking to learn, you can, from our YouTube channel, type in the search, chapter 8, and from there you'll see many times that I've taught the three poisons and gone through it in detail. But this afternoon, what I'm going to do, since all of you have studied this with me even just recently, is just see if there's anything you guys have questions about and be sure that you've independently verified these. So if you remember the three poisons, when I share them, I talk about them from a high level: this craving, anger, and ignorance, or greed, hatred, and delusion, this selfishness, these longing, this yearning, that's the craving that's causing the mind to experience discontentedness. Then there's the anger, which is the hostility, the bitterness, the harshness, that's what's motivating that unskillful conduct. And then there's the ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. If you guys haven't independently been able to confirm this in your own life and seeing people around you and observing things around you, let's talk about that and help you guys be sure that you have independently verified that this is the truth, what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. Is there anything that you guys would like to discuss about the three poisons? Anything that you're having challenges with to independently verify? No? Yep. Can you get a mic, Jan? I know that's new since you've been here last. You have to press the gray button on it, and then the lights come on. Did the lights come on?
The one that I have trouble with is delusion.
Okay.
And it's hard for me to differentiate from a delusion because things that I believe, I believe that they're true.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how you go about verifying if what you believe is true or what you're believing is a delusion.
Okay. Can you give me an example of one of those, or two or three of them?
Okay. One of the things that
The mic went out.
One of the things that I've had trouble with is sometimes my perceptions of people.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to group people all in one big category, and I tend to mind read. I think I know what they're thinking before, and so then therefore I don't ask any questions.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I break that habit of mind reading people and in my own mind coming up with an answer and just assuming that the answer I came up with is right?
Okay, so this is referred to as clinging to perceptions in the teachings of the Buddha. A perception is a view or opinion that may or may not be true. It seems to be true within your own mind, but you don't necessarily know that it is true. This is a perception. And when we cling to our perceptions, now we're oftentimes making decisions based on false information. And now that leads to unwholesome results for us because we're making a decision thinking that we know the truth. We really don't know the truth. And now we've made all these series of decisions, and you get to the end of that and you realize that your premise or your perception was false. And now this is what is producing the unwholesome karma or the unwholesome results. So you need to be able to see that unless you've seen it, unless you've heard it, unless you've directly experienced it, you don't know the truth. So for example, if you think you're reading somebody's mind, you need to ask questions, right? Like if you're assuming your husband's mad, for example, because he's in the room sitting by himself, and you're just assuming that he's mad at you. This could be clinging to a perception. So rather than you getting angry that he's in the room alone and maybe he's angry at you, instead of clinging to that perception, you might decide to go and say, John, is there anything that's bothering you? Is there anything that you need to talk about? And he's like, no, I'm perfectly fine. I'm just here reading a book. Oh, okay. Now you know the truth because he shared that with you. Like, no, I'm perfectly fine. If he's telling the truth, right? But even if he's not, that's on him. He's sharing that with you, right? So anytime you think you know the truth, you don't know the truth because you just think or you just believe like what you're saying. So that would be clinging to a perception. But what we're talking about here, when we're talking about ignorance or knowing of true reality, this is ignorance of the natural laws of existence. That if you didn't know that you were clinging to your perceptions, that would be ignorance or unknowing of true reality. But just clinging to your perception is part of ignorance in terms of the mind is still doing it. The mind is still having craving, still clinging, but the wisdom part of ignorance, the transformation of it, is to get the mind to wisdom, is to know the natural laws intellectually, but then to be able to practice it as well. So if the mind is clinging to perceptions, it is still having this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality because it's not fully practicing the teachings. But to get to the point where you've eradicated ignorance, you need to first learn the teachings intellectually and then be practicing them. That's when ignorance is actually fully eradicated, when the mind is practicing it. So like, for example, we can know that it's unwise to take substances that cause heedlessness, but we might still do it. or we might know it's unwise. Intellectually, we know it's unwise to maybe have sexual misconduct, but someone might still do it. So in this situation, the mind still has ignorance because it's still doing this thing that is unwise. So it's still practicing this unknowing of true reality. So while some people use this word delusion, I don't really use that too much because I think that the word ignorance or the unknowing of true reality or misunderstanding or confusion represents this one better, because the mind is confused about true reality and what's truly transpiring. It's confused of these natural laws. It's misunderstanding what's truly going on. So part of the ignorance is thinking that someone else is causing you to be angry. This would be ignorance, or any number of things. If the mind is unenlightened, there's still ignorance in the mind. It hasn't fully cultivated wisdom to be purified and experience the enlightened mental state. So when we talk about the 10 fetters later in the course, the ignorance is one of the fetters. We talk about it here from the high level, but it's also one of the individual fetters, and it's the last one, because it's the last one to be eliminated. If the mind is unenlightened even to the slightest degree, there's still ignorance in the mind. It hasn't been able to quite cultivate enough wisdom to fully practice the teachings. So while clinging to perceptions is the mind being ignorant and it doesn't know the truth, what we're talking about here is the natural laws, that it's ignorant of the natural laws. Does that make sense? Okay. And this is the problem of all problems. Even though we talk about craving, desire, attachment as the cause of discontentedness, the only reason why that's there is because of ignorance. If it wasn't for ignorance, craving wouldn't exist. And if it wasn't for ignorance, anger wouldn't exist. But because of the unknowing of true reality, craving and anger continues to exist. So in terms of what your real goal is on the path to enlightenment, while we focus a lot of attention on eliminating craving, desire, attachment, what you're really truly doing is cultivating wisdom. That's why I usually start with all my courses with don't believe anything I say, because you can't get to enlightenment through belief. You need to get to wisdom where you know the truth. And that's why I would like to take some time here, since you guys have already learned the 3 poisons, is be sure that you've independently verified these, that they're in your own mind. You can see how each one of them are connected and interrelated, that you can see them within your own mind, and you can even start to see them in other people's mind too, how people are just unknowing of true reality, or they're having craving, or they're having anger, and this is all being produced by inside your one's own mind. Anything you guys would like to talk about here on this? Let's see, any of you guys online, if you guys have questions about the 3 poisons, these 3 unwholesome roots, you guys can ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online. So again, for all of you guys online, I imagine you guys may not have necessarily studied the 3 poisons with me. I chose not to talk about it here in detail the way I normally do in a course, because all the people here have studied this with me. But you can go to our YouTube channel and type in chapter 8, or you can type in the 3 poisons, and you can see me teaching this, because it's been recorded many times, where you need to be able to understand these 3 high-level pollutions that are going to help you understand the problems in the mind. And then there's certain solutions that are provided for each one of these, because you need to transform the mind away from these poisons or these unwholesome roots, because this is what's motivating all unskillful conduct. And when you are being motivated and your mind is making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, it's going to produce unwholesome results, or unwholesome karma, like we were talking about yesterday. So that's why it's so important to understand what these are, so that you can spot it when they're arising in your mind, and then you can apply right effort to cut it off. So you need to be mindful of these. These are mental objects. Like we were talking about mindfulness before lunch, these are mental objects that you need to be aware when they're arising, and then apply right effort to cut it off and let it go. And this is how you're going to ultimately transform the mind. Whereas if you keep allowing the cravings, the anger, and the ignorance to arise, and you don't do anything about it, then it's just going to continue to exist in the mind. And the Buddha refers to this as complacency, that whenever there's any kind of unwholesome quality that is arising in your mind, if you do nothing about it, the Buddha considers this to be complacency, where we oftentimes think about complacency as like you choose not to meditate, or you choose not to read, or you choose not to come to the temple. Yeah, that's complacency. But the Buddha describes complacency all the way down to the level if you're just walking down the street and an unwholesome thought comes into your mind and you don't do anything about it, the mind is complacent. So in order to really transform your mind and get to the point where the mind is enlightened, your mindfulness is going to need to be so fine-tuned that you're aware of that unwholesome thought when you're walking down the street, and then you take action, that you apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. And these are three of the unwholesome qualities that can arise that you need to be mindful of, having awareness of mind, and cut off and let go. And that's what's going to ultimately transform the mind. You're using these solutions that I talk about, like breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, to proactively train the mind. You're using loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in daily life to proactively train the mind. You're cultivating wisdom about these natural laws to proactively train the mind. Those are all things you're doing proactively. But then in the moment, whenever you see craving, anger, ignorance arise, you got to cut it off and let it go. So these are the two aspects of training the mind, is the proactive training to readily, on a consistent, ongoing basis, train the mind. But then in the moment, being able to notice with your mindfulness that these things are arising, and then cut it off and let it go. And that's what's going to fully transform the mind, is that you're doing proactive training, and then you're training in the moment when these things are arising. And that's why mindfulness is so important. And that's why the Buddha prioritized breathing, mindfulness, meditation, because it is so important that you need that mindfulness in the moment. If you allow your mind to become angry or frustrated or agitated, which I know it's going to happen on your way to enlightenment, but if you allow that to occur, that's where then your speech and your actions can become unskillful. So the Buddha is teaching you to catch it long before it comes into the mind, so you can cut it off and let it go. All the while, you're proactively training the mind with meditation and generosity and all these other teachings. But then you need to be in the moment with your mental discipline, with your mindfulness, your concentration, and then applying right effort to cut it off and let it go. Okay? All right, so I'm not seeing any questions anywhere, either online or here at the temple. So I'm going to end class here, even though it's only 2:15. Today is usually like a little bit of a recap for people that have been studying with me for a little bit. And then the rest of the course is all brand new stuff that you guys probably haven't learned with me before. And then the reason why I do this is to give you guys a recap or a refresh, but then oftentimes there's brand new students here that haven't learned with me before. And this allows them to then kind of get the basics and the foundation, just a little bit of that, so that then the rest of the course they'll be able to understand. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys as a refresher, just to kind of get you back into the swing of understanding what the Buddha taught on the Eightfold Path and the three poisons. And now the rest of the course, we're going to be going forward and learning all new things. So tomorrow morning, we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation. If you guys haven't learned this with me yet, I'm going to be guiding you in loving kindness meditation, one individually, one by one, spending an entire class period. Where if you took the Foundation to the Path to Enlightenment course, I think I spent maybe 15 minutes kind of giving you an overview or an introduction to these. Now we're going to spend more time talking about them individually, what they are, what the symptoms are, and how to eliminate them for that period of time that we're going to be talking tomorrow afternoon. So thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for attending today's class, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay? Have a lovely rest of your day. Sawadee Kap.